Welcome, everyone. The theme for today is the first Impressionist Exhibition. You'll likely see painters and artworks you're familiar with. Please enjoy your visit.
Astruc had a strong interest in foreign cultures. He produced works inspired by the Flanders region, Japanese dolls, experiences from a trip to Spain, and a gift from China. These works included portrayals of two women posing with a Chinese gift in London and a woman in an interior scene in Paris. His exhibited works were widely appreciated. One critic described them as bright and lively, with the vibrant colors and light captivating the viewer, while another praised them as shining and enjoyable. Despite this positive reception, Astruc did not continue to align himself with the Impressionists, instead choosing to return to the Salon. His goal was to achieve public recognition at the Salon. By almost equally dividing the canvas with a horizontal line, creating a balance between land and sky, Bodin aimed to accurately capture the atmospheric essence. His artist friends admired his depiction of the sky. Corot dubbed him the king of the sky, while Courbet stated, "You're the only one who truly knows the sky." Critics who discussed the first Impressionist exhibition recognized that Bodin held an intermediate position between the academicism of many Salon exhibitors and the avant-garde nature of the Impressionists. Despite his work L'Atelier, Côte de Camere receiving almost no attention at the first Impressionist exhibition, the single critic who did take note of it considered it among the exceptional works. Invited by Degas to participate in the first Impressionist Exhibition, Braquemond submitted 31 prints grouped into 5 large frames. These included portraits of contemporary men and women artists and writers, prints based on other art pieces, a variety of literary themes, and landscapes. The wide range of these works, which included a balanced mix of original and derivative pieces, highlighted his rich sources of inspiration. Many of these prints had already been published in magazines or exhibited at the Salon and were not related to the avant-garde aesthetic seen in other works at the Impressionist Exhibition. However, Braquemond's depiction of light effects on plants and his handling of water in landscapes indicated his interest in these avant-garde trends. Like Brandon and Bodin, Bureau was one of the slightly older artists who had already achieved some success at the Salon before participating in the first Impressionist exhibition. In fact, Moonlight on the Banks of the Oise near L'Isle-Adam had been exhibited at the Salon in 1867 before being displayed at the exhibition in 1874. It is also the only work known to have been exhibited by Bureau. According to a critic's description, Mr. Pierre Bureau creates a pale moonlight in the night sky. A path extends across the green lawn, and a small black figure, perhaps a thief, walks over it. In the distance, a river flows under a bridge without piers, with a spread of white light in the background. The aged fisherman, dressed in a sturdy jacket and wearing a wide-brimmed hat, places his hands on his knees and gazes at us with firm eyes. His weathered visage is captured by the light coming from the right. The Old Fisherman is a work lent by Henri Ruert. This painting did not receive special attention in contemporary newspaper critiques. However, Cowles's exhibits as a whole were able to earn a certain degree of appraisal. One critic said of this work, "He imparts his meditative and thoughtful artistry to the depiction of typical figures and popular scenes." Although Cowles played a role in connecting the Impressionists with the earlier generation of realists such as Corot and Bodin, his participation in 1874 marked the end of his submissions to the Salon. This painting of a thatched roof house was created during Cézanne's stay in Auvers-sur-Oise and its nearby town, Pontoise. While there, Pissarro introduced Cézanne to his own primary physician, Dr. Gachet, at the end of 1872. Dr. Gachet was an avid collector of avant-garde paintings. In return, Dr. Gachet offered Cézanne a place to live with his family. Cézanne and Pissarro worked side by side, developing a new style and choice of motifs that would eventually become known as the Pontoise school. This style was characterized by a love for pastoral themes and a painterly approach that featured thickly applied paint and fully worked surfaces. Under Pissarro's influence, Cézanne abandoned his former interest in literary and dramatic subjects, turning his gaze to the natural visible world. Painted outdoors in front of the motif, this painting communicates the artist's effort, visible on the repeatedly reworked canvas surface, to grasp the essence of traditional painterly elements from a higher viewpoint. A painter who, like Courbet, loved to use a palette knife, Collin here avoids applying thick coats of paint and instead uses very smooth brushstrokes. Instead, he repeatedly scrapes the paint with very smooth brushstrokes, exposing the rough, raw canvas in places. Collin may be considered one of the older generation that anticipated the Impressionists, given his realistic interest, dazzling landscapes and seascapes painted outdoors, and freely sketched compositions. Here, it is his masterful sense of color that has succeeded in infusing this small seascape with the strong southern light that illuminates the surface of the water at high tide. Degas' paintings of dancers, much like his depictions of women laundering or bathing, constitute a part of his broad interest in themes captured from modern life. In order to grasp their personalities and accurately understand their rehearsal movements, he consistently adjusts his compositions. In this instance, due to the image prior to overpainting surfacing, it can be inferred that initially, there was another man to the right of the man in the top hat, and the dancer's feet were positioned to the left of the foreground. Nearly all of Degas' works that were submitted to the first exhibition had already become part of private collections before the exhibition was held. For example, ballet rehearsal on stage was borrowed from a collector in Paris. Painted in grisaille, it is the only work known in Degas' oeuvre as a monochrome painting technique, and it may have been intended for printmaking. Armand Guillemot is one of the lesser-known French Impressionists. Yet he could count among his artist friends such figures as Paul Cézanne and Camille Pissarro, whom he met at the Académie Suisse where he studied from 1861. The heat of the day and the golden light gradually fade away, as the cold blue of the approaching night begins to descend on the darkening scene of industrial chimneys and water. There is poise in this painting between nature on the one hand and the industrial and the social on the other. This is the museum director's favorite piece. This work is one of many paintings by Lépine set in a narrow alleyway near his residence in Montmartre. The way he composes the scene, with buildings on either side of the elongated small canvas and anecdotal characters adding color to the scene, is a signature of his style. La Rue Courtois, featuring a child conversing with a nun, was created between 1871-73. In 1874, several critics took notice of Rue Courtois. One referred to it as one of the most excellent landscape paintings, while another wrote, "It is a marvelous work that would make Corot and Daubigny envious." What fascinates us in Mr. Lépine's talent is that he knows how to retain elegance while portraying the truth. Despite the early hour, the harbor is already bustling with activity. Small boats dot the foreground, and in the distance, the smoke rising from the masts of large ships and factory chimneys lend a lively motion to the horizon. The canvas bears the date 1872, but many researchers argue that the work was painted the following year, with the date added later. Despite this discrepancy, it is likely that Monet saw Turner's paintings while he was staying in England during the Franco-Prussian War. One author has written that this sunrise painting, painted just as France was recovering from war and the destructive Paris Commune, must be interpreted as Monet's patriotic vision of a resurrected, dignified homeland. On the other hand, many critics uniformly ignored this work. Conservative critics harshly criticized Monet's lack of artistic discipline, writing that the impression of sunrise is painted with a childish touch, like a schoolchild first applying paint to a surface. Famously, Louis Leroy of the newspaper Le Chivrerie also didn't understand why Monet would happily exhibit unfinished works, saying, "Even a wallpaper in the making is better done than this seascape." The works Morisot exhibited at the first Impressionist Exhibition in 1874 can be seen as attempts to record depictions of everyday life, particularly the lifestyle of her sister, Edma. The sisters were very close, studying painting together under Guichard, sharing a studio, copying past masters at the Louvre, and getting to know many artists including Monet, Degas, and Puvis de Chavannes. Morisot likely thought that by asking her sister to model for her, she could keep her involved in the process of artistic creation even after Edma gave up painting for marriage and children in 1869. The Cradle is a double portrait of Morisot's sister and her new baby, filled with a private atmosphere of maternal love in a gentle and intimate scene. By distancing the viewer from the model, she avoids falling into sentimentality. The mother is dreamily looking at her child, but the baby is closing her eyes, and we are excluded from their gaze. This exclusion is further materialized by the verticality of the muslin in the mother's hand and the largeness of the horizontal cradle, preventing us from intruding into their space. The reviews were all favorable, as one critic stated. "There is nothing more truthful and affectionate than the sight of a young mother. Her appearance is indeed ungainly, leaning over a cradle where, through the pale cloud pattern of the muslin, the rosy child sleeping can be faintly seen."
Captivated by the transient scenes that nature creates, Pissarro felt compelled to depict frost here. Frost is an ephemeral weather phenomenon that occurs when moisture accumulates during the freezing night, covering everything with a thin layer of ice. As we see a man trudging up the old road to Ennery near Pontoise, carrying a bundle of firewood, Pissarro captures the moment when the morning light illuminates the white frost, just before it begins to melt. The season and the early morning hour are suggested by the long, diagonal shadows. The shadows extend from the bottom right of the frame towards the upper left, almost in parallel lines, cast from a row of leafless poplar trees located outside of the frame. This painting attracted considerable attention in the reviews of the first Impressionist Exhibition. 2 critics counted it among the best works of the exhibition. However, Leroy dismissed this painting as merely scrapings from a palette.
In The Dancer, Renoir is rather addressing a subject that would be more fitting for Degas than for himself. In this almost life-size portrait, the ballerina stands in the 5th position, holding a handkerchief. From the background, it's unclear whether she is performing or rehearsing, but she is probably just posing as a model. Clearly, Renoir was more interested in capturing her individuality than in understanding the movements, attitudes, and gestures of the dancer that so fascinated Degas. Moreover, while Degas passionately pursued drawing, Renoir was putting his utmost efforts into somehow capturing the play of light. He used overwhelming brushstrokes, the blue of ribbons and decorative bands, pink shoes, and a black ribbon around her neck echoed by a black bracelet, to delve into the exploration of more subtle changes in color, like the play of light on the soft fabric of the costume. Overall, Renoir's The Dancer was favorably received by critics discussing the 1874 exhibition. They wrote that this painting was graceful, charming, and harmonious, although some felt it was unfinished and expressed dissatisfaction with what seemed like a mundane background. Sisley concentrated on the quiet naturalism of villages outside Paris, rejecting more common Impressionist subjects such as urban social scenes, seaside leisure activities, or idealized rural life. Sisley's freely handled broad strokes of color summarize but do not obscure details of figures, architecture, and nature. When this painting was shown in the first Impressionist Exhibition of 1874, Sisley escaped the scathing criticism leveled by journalists at Monet, Cézanne, and other painters of the new Impressionist group. Described as the most harmonious of the artists represented, Sisley was praised for his exquisite landscapes that conveyed so completely, so perfectly, the physical sensation of atmosphere, of being out in the open air.
Thank you for watching so far. How was it? By the way, the building you see now is actually the studio of the photographer Nadar, where the first Impressionist exhibition was held. I've mentioned some artists who participated but were not covered in this video in the description. Please do check it out. In the future, we will continue to hold themed exhibitions and upload videos delving into individual paintings. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything.